Good morning. This is Steve Attarian. I'm here with Dr. Steve Wilson, and Stephen is here to review last night's presentation he did at Dynamite Spa. Trying to get this adjusted a little bit better so we're both in there. At Dynamite Spa, they do all kinds of enhancements to the beauty of the skin and the exterior and the health of people, some laser treatments, some cold fat removal treatments, and some other things. And you were speaking to a nice audience, I would say 30 people or so, of the benefits of being healthy from within and having that radiate to the beauty of the exterior. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you talked about and how that went?
Well, principally, beauty really should come from within. What we've done to ourselves is we've created an enormous amount of a fat layer between the skin and the rest of the body. And that fat layer blocks nutrients from getting to the skin, and the skin begins to die. And no one wants to look at that because it really tells everyone that you're aging, and no one wants to age. So what they find themselves doing is buying all kinds of things to cover up some of these problems. And if we could show the evidence of taking the layer of fat out to where we can get nutrients to the skin, because oxygen begins to bring life, and if we can't get the oxygen to that cell, it dies very quickly, by the way.
Can I interrupt that thought real
Sure.
quick? Because I know that one of the most important things you and I talk about in our health is also the elimination. And the skin is one of the biggest organs we have to eliminate the toxins from our bloodstream out through the skin. If there's a fat layer between our lymph system and blood out to the skin, does that affect elimination also?
Oh, very much. In fact, there's a number of studies that show that that layer of fat actually eliminates the elimination process and forces those toxins back down into the joint, which is one of the principal causes of arthritis.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things we never talk about, but so many people have achy joints and things of that nature, and they fail to understand that skin is the largest organ of the body. Obviously on the outside, your largest organ of the body on the inside is your liver. And isn't it interesting that both of the largest organs are processes of elimination?
Mm-hmm.
So we create enormous amounts of toxins as we keep this biochemistry going within the cell to create energy. And if that source is what the topic was last night, many Americans in particular, because of their consumption of sugar, using that as a fuel, is bypassing this story called ATP, which is the way we're designed to create energy. And in doing so, we create this layer of fat that is such a problem to Americans, not only how they look, but how they feel, and really the health of the body, because fat is directly associated with disease.
And interestingly enough, you gave a great statistic yesterday about how many pounds of sugar the average American ingests in a year versus 50 years ago or so. What were those numbers?
Well, at the turn of the 1900s.
Okay.
Okay.
A little more than 50 years ago.
Yeah,
Kind of almost when you were born, huh?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
The average consumed amount of sugar at the turn of the century was 5 pounds a year. And now suddenly, 100 years later, whatever it is, we are turning in at about 175 pounds of refined sugar per year. Now, you need to keep that in mind, because there are a lot of us now that are moving away from the sugar addiction. So someone's consuming more than the average. Someone's eating my share. So that means you're getting more. And if you take a look at cereals as an example, refined, any one of the box cereals, you don't have to put a name on it, but if you look at the top 10, they're at least 50% refined sugar.
Wow.
And then the rest of the nutrient is just not a nutrient. It's
it's also flour, highly processed dead flour,
Mhm.
in which your body recognizes as sugar and processes as sugar immediately.
Very quickly.
Very young, wonderful interview I listened to yesterday was a woman named J.J. Virgin. She's written several books, and her discussion or interview with Jonathan Fields yesterday was based on sugar. And she made a couple of amazing statements. One is that Americans are now eating dessert for breakfast. And that goes to your statement of, cereal being 50% sugar. She also says, people start their day with a muffin. That's a cupcake without icing. She also made a statement of, we have something like 32 teaspoons of sugar a day. And and there's less sugar at the table than there ever used to be. So it's not taking spoonfuls of sugar and piling it on top of our cereal or putting it into our coffee or tea. It's actually what's built into the food.
It's already there.
It's already there. And, I was looking at granola on the shelf the other day, and I was looking at it, was this organic and healthy granola, and I looked at it, and then the second ingredient was sugar. And then down a little further was refined cane juice. Well, isn't sugar cane juice? And it didn't say sugar cane, it just said cane juice. And just one last little statistic, I may bring it up again because it was a really wonderful interview, was that apple juice has more refined sugar, is higher on the glucose scale than soda pop.
Well, look at your orange juices. They're huge. Look at some of your yogurts. 40 grams of sugar.
40 grams of sugar.
Yeah. And, we want to pound on sugar and make it the devil. But why don't we talk about for a moment the real positive side here? First, let's put a definition. When sugar metabolizes, and this is according to the George Washington School of Medicine, and a host of others, they're now claiming this, that it metabolizes to an opiate-like substance.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. So if we're having an oh woe is me pity party, and we have no energy, it would make sense to gravitate to sugar. Because we know that all at once we don't feel as bad, and we got a little burst of energy, and all is well until the next downer, which is 45 minutes, so you find yourself sipping on sugar again. But if it is, according to UCLA, and you go from West Coast to East Coast in terms of academia, and all of the shortcomings that sugar produces, why would we do that when, in fact, if we made a trade, and you and I are in the business of trading.
Mm-hmm.
So if I suggested to a consumer of sugar, would you make a trade that would give you more energy with less downtime for less money? Would you make that trade? And I think most people would go, oh yeah, I think I would do that. Inherently, I don't think there's many people that don't understand how bad sugar is. They just don't know where to go and replace it. Right. And that's what you and I are discussing, the many, many, many ways of replacing the sugars that they consume with something that will give them more energy for a longer period of time for less money. And you got your phone taken care of?
Now I do.
Now you do. So, that's what people need to hear. They are looking for a way out. And by the way, it will only take about a week to 3 weeks, 4 weeks to exchange that craving for sugar. And the long and short of it is they'll begin to lose weight. All kinds of diseases will go away. It's an amazing trade. All kinds of statistics right now are absolutely laying at the feet of sugar the diseases that we own today.
I love, and here I go right back to that interview because it reinforced to me so much of what you say on a daily basis to me. You mentioned that sugar is like an opiate, and she referred to J.J. Virgin again in this interview referred to a test where rats were given morphine, and an Oreo cookie. And not only did they give up the morphine and for the Oreo cookie, but within the beginning of the experiment, they broke open the Oreo cookie and went right for the icing like we did. So anyway, that is so true in so many ways. And the audience last night had a lot of questions about sugar and how ATP, the process of creating that energy within the cell, what are the, Steve Slaughter was there and shared some comments at the end with us. And he made a statement that he sees on some of these energy drinks the term ATP, and it's included as an ingredient. And he finds that interesting because you can't take ATP and put it through the digestive system and have it be entered into the cells as the energy agent that it is. That it has to be built within our system, and then it's part of the process within the cell walls, not something that happens in the stomach and then gets sent out to the cell walls. So would you touch on that a little bit, how that sugar is different than ATP, or is...
Well, sugar is a stimulant. And I think that people need to understand, I come off of a farm ranch background. And so what we did is we had a prodder, an electric prodder, to get cows to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what that sugar does to a cell. It just plops it and it lurches forward one more time. Where ATP is the energy the way we were designed. And that gets to be really interesting because fat, essential fats, are the principal source of energy for ATP. And let me give you some examples. If you use protein to use it in terms of building ATP, you get 4 molecules of ATP per molecule of protein.
Okay.
Carbohydrates, you get 4 molecules of ATP per molecule of carbohydrate.
Okay.
Fat, you get 129 molecules of ATP per molecule of fat.
Wow. So
in the way the body functions, it stores fat for energy in the future. And then you have some hormones that determine whether you need to have energy because of your eating habits. And if they're functioning correctly, they will turn that fat into energy. And it's an interesting bit of science because of the long-term energy called endurance that's produced from that angle. My son is quite an athlete, and he was talking about some studies by a triathlonist. And if you establish a heart rate, in my case, for my age, he said, gave me a number of about 125 beats. And if I work 125 beats or less in a workout regimen, I burn fat as an energy. The minute I exceed 125, it goes to protein or carbohydrate, and that ratio is only 4:1. So the efficiency goes way down. So in this analogy, if you could keep your workout, and so that means you become physically more fit to keep your heart rate slow, increasing your endurance. Wow, what an interesting approach to science. And that's where this has suddenly come to in terms of performance. Some athletes are, if they're younger, they can get their heart rate up to about 140, and at 140, obviously they're burning fat. So if they're triathlonists, it would give them more endurance to go further. And the minute you convert that to burning sugars, you have just absolutely changed your mileage from 129 miles per molecule to 4.
Well, and my research over the years, and now tying it all back into biblical principles, God is an amazing creator. He thought of all of our needs before he ever created Adam. And to me, the fight-flight mechanism and what we deal with in cortisol and some of the hormones, because I'd love to touch on some of the hormone discussions we had last night. That's something that's not mentioned much in in what's happening. But I believe that it's hormonal, that it's a body chemistry that's saying, a communication within our body that's saying, hey, we need to get across that field before the lion starts chewing on our ankles. So if we get across that field as fast as possible and get up that tree, we're going to live to eat tomorrow. But if we can't get across that field, doesn't matter whether we're here tomorrow. So our bodies shut down important functions. The function of digestion goes away when we're in stress. The function of the immune system goes away when we're in stress. The function of reproduction goes away when we're in stress. When we're trying to get across that field, if we stop and look at the beautiful woman over on the other side of the field and go, ooh, baby, baby, we're going to get eaten. If we were to stop and say, I need to visit the porta potty over here, the lion is going to eat us. So we've taken that, the way the body deals with, I've got to process this quickly for energy. I'm trying to tie it back into what you said. Because I need that energy quick, I need it now, and I need to deal with this situation, versus this is how I handle things slowly, calmly, and throughout the day. So I believe that's the difference between being in stress and just converting energy, I need it and now, I gotta go do this, I gotta go do that, versus the slow endurance of my body is healthy, it is going through its processes, and this is a more relaxed and peaceful way to live.
Well, in your analogy, if it's you and I in this lion, the only one I have to outrun is you.
That's true. That's true.
And so that kind of gets easier for me.
Well, depends on how long that field is.
I understand. Now, to give you an example, I think the world knows how the delivery of electricity in an electrical car is 100% immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Now, think about that for a moment in terms of a gas-driven with a battery in a car, that if you're going to use the battery to run it, it will be very quick for a very short distance.
Mm-hmm.
The engine, though, filled with gasoline, will take you indefinitely. What we have done in America is we're using the battery to run our body.
Mm.
It's very quick. It's got to be refilled many, many times, but it is an instant movement. And if people got that picture of that recharging of the battery and how short the distance is with that run, but it's quick. That's the lion thing. All at once, we can kind of get a picture as to the stress that puts on the glands that build the energy real quickly. I'm trying to help you with the gland that
Adrenal glands?
the adrenal glands. If it's the adrenal system that's being overworked, then you have an ugly thing called immunosenescence.
I can't even spell that.
I can't either.
Okay.
But it's what it means is your immune system, the senescence part means cell death.
Mm.
And you put so much stress on your immune system that the cells that make that up die. So you've immediately put yourself in a very, very ugly position with viruses, bacterial issues, and things where disease is present. Your defense system is shot.
Mm.
So if people looked at that and said, geez, I am subject to colds and all those little things that come down, could it be the way you're running your engine? Oh, well, then, that begins to put things in proper perspective. And if you're using sugar, then your immune system is shot down. And here's a crazy number, that we all know that 1 out of 3 of us will come down with cancer. In 1931, they found that cancer will not live in an oxygenated tissue. There's a Nobel Prize won. Along with that, it's through the years now we've found that sugar is the energy or the food for cancer. Well, what a combination. If we could put something in the body that created oxygen to the cell and it wasn't based on sugar, I mean, there's an enormous amount of logic would say that would be a deep defense against cancer by simply eliminating that sugar and creating energy in the right form. Common sense is that if we find ourselves walking in common sense, or outside, maybe I should say outside of common sense, you basically will find yourself walking with the dead or the dying.
Touch on that again, Steve. I'm not sure how you got to the dead and the dying in that sentence.
Well, from a verse in Proverbs,
Okay.
it says, if you walk outside of common sense, you will find yourself walking with the dead or dying.
Ah.
So the common sense would be take the sugar out, increase the oxygen, and you've suddenly found yourself walking amongst the living, because the word oxygen literally means life.
Okay.
And when you don't get oxygen, you die.
That's true. And
Quickly.
I mean, you can live a little while without food. You live a little while without water. You don't live very long without food.
This oxygen thing is really, really quick. So when we're talking about health, I mean, just to put it down and not get into any products or anything like that, but if you could create a medium to move more oxygen in the right form to tissue, you could function better. Okay. And what we're doing is we're not doing it in America.
We're not doing that in America. And gosh, last night we talked about plaque buildup on the arteries. We've got about 5 to 10 more minutes at the most. We talked about plaque buildup on the arteries, and especially in the brain, and how that might affect dementia. Not that dementia, but dementia. And we all understand that plaque buildup within the system and the heart, has been pointed to that it's cholesterol that causes that, but there was a discussion last night that it's sugar, and it's there was some discussion about the wrong type of calcium being used as a supplement, and that the additional calcium is being deposited within the bloodstream. So it's tough to pick the subject, but if we're going to have a discussion, wrap up a conclusion statement. Based on last night's conversation, what would you like that audience of 30 people, because they had some great questions too, regarding supplements, regarding adenosine, regarding, it wasn't adenosine, it was arginine, and there was another gentleman that referred to a book that how calcium is killing us.
Well,
so
that was one of the doctors in the audience.
Okay.
And a lot of Western medicine type people, particularly this one, he's already told me that he's moving toward the natural side, my side of the aisle, because we're seeing some really, really, I mean, all at once it's modestly obvious to anybody that's thinking that you can't continue to put a rock in your body thinking it can get into the cell.
When you say rock, you're talking
Calcium
carbonate, which is a salt, which is derived from the earth and the rock.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to...
I was walking through this with a lady that was taking a form of calcium phosphate, and when you put a mineral in inorganic form into the soil, and it's sucked into the root system of a plant, and then the plant digests it. And in that process, all of science goes brain dead. We don't know how it does it, we just know that it does it. But that goes from an inorganic to an organic. It's alive, and it's got peptides and a delivery system to the cell. And that's interesting because the argument has always been in nutrition, well, calcium is calcium no matter where and what you buy. Well, that's not true. For you to argue that organic, meaning it's alive, is the same as inorganic, which means it's dead, is very, very hard for anyone thinking to absorb. And so what Western science and in our efforts to be very quick we don't have time. So we take a synthetic vitamin, which is principally made from petroleum products, and attach it or eat it with an inorganic salt mineral and say that we're feeding the cell is really a stretch.
Well, you've made the statement of taking a synthetic item and a dead item and combining them together to create life.
It's hard to put together.
And I know that you say it more eloquently than I do. But I think that, we'll just use that last statement to wrap up and to say thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for the wonderful imparting of your knowledge again today. We'll see you next week at Friday morning at 8 o'clock. And we'll follow up on more discussions on how to create life the way that our Creator suggests we create it. And you be blessed this week. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, it's good.